up? Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first episode of Design Demo Days. Very first video on this channel as well. Nice to see you all. What's up? Hello. Let's get started. System. All right. Folks, today we're going to be talking about our first ever demo day. So, today we're going to be reviewing a very special design project. We're going to be talking about it. I'm going to be sharing some behind the scenes, going to be showing you some Figma files, some FigJam files. But overall, this is the first session on this channel. So that's a big deal for me. Personally, getting a little bit just straight up honest with you guys, I hate starting from zero. So please, if you're here, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It'll definitely help us get to that first milestone. Yes, this is a brand new channel and it's difficult doing that. Folks, a quick personal update, okay, from my end. My personal update is that I'm like not productive at all. What kind of update is this? It does feel like the last 2 months of the year, November, December, is chill mode. What's happening? It's chill mode. But other than that, one of my main reasons for that has been this. The weather where I am is 4 degrees with the sunset today at 3:50 p.m. Like literally it's 2:30 right now and you're telling me by the time I'm done with this stream it's going to be dark in the middle of the afternoon. I don't know how relatable that is, but it's super difficult. Let me just say that. It doesn't get easier. So I'm like kind of in my low productive state, but it's always exciting to do one of these, streams. So it's not going to be boring. We're going to have a lot of interesting things to talk about. Yeah, December blues. And you know what? Like it kind of does start in November. It does start in November, given that it's a holiday season, India and then, rest of the world. But yeah, November blues for sure. Check this out though. Just to set the theme, December theme. You guys know what this is. I don't think I need to tell you all what the R stands for here. I'm sure all of you know what the R stands for. Today, we're going to be looking at one of the big projects that we've been working on at 10K Designers. Overall, the duration of this project was about 3 months, if I had to put a number on it. About 3 months. And it took a while. It took a really long time. But today, I want to walk you through that. Yes, it is about a design project, but overall, I don't want to get I don't want it to be boring, right? I don't want this session to be boring. All of you here, you're joining me in the evening. I have this chill mode right now where I'm like, oh, zero channel, new this thing. But it's going to be interesting. The very interesting thing about designing a website, right? Let's start there. The very interesting thing about designing a website is you are designing in a lot of ways, the point of discovery, the source of truth for whoever it is you're designing for, right? So you as a designer, let's say you are making a website for yourself, you're making it for a client, it's a company, it's a creator, it's some event. The difficulty with a website is that it's supposed to be the source of truth, right? So yes, there is a design part associated with it, like actual visual design part, which I think is the more common one that most people know about, the visual design parts that happen. Visual design parts are also the most exciting parts of it because it's the parts that are visible. You see it, right? And you see it, you don't see things in isolation, right? That's one of my learnings as a designer, which is when you see something, like actually observe something, you can't help but also feel when you see, right? There is a feeling that is associated with seeing something, with making an observation. As a designer, though, you can train yourself to not really jump to this, to not really jump to observations. But anyway, Folks, no more abstract talk. Okay, abstract talk, I'll talk about it once we start seeing it in context with some design work. Today, I want to hear from you in the chat once that showed up today. Let's start with this. What do you hope to see in today's session? Because as much as possible, I love talking about my work, but what I love even more is if my work is helpful to other people out there. So throughout the session, I'm going to be checking in with chat. I'm going to be asking you, what do you want to see more of? Right? Instead of putting slides, I'm going to walk you through. And if the answer is IDK, that's totally okay, right? We're going to be today checking out a bunch of stuff. I don't know if this is the most for those of you who have very limited context, since we are on a new channel. My name is Abhinav. This is 10K Designers. Today, we're going to be talking about this. Let me show you this right here. We're going to show you this right here. This is the project we're going to be talking about. This is the video that I just played as well. And this is the 10K Designers website. Now, one thing that you will see is this was definitely a team effort. So let me start there. Of course, in this particular project, I am the client, but I am also the designer, which is a tricky position to be in. Those of you who've tried designing your own portfolio, you know how difficult it is, because sometimes when it's clients, you can be like, yeah, the client wants this. But when it's you that you're designing for, how can you be okay with something less than the best, right? At the same time, you don't always have the time to go for the best, right? So you do have to kind of be playing with these trade-offs all the time. Anyway, I'm the client, but I'm also the design lead on this. UI was done by Smeeth. Video design, this particular video that you all saw, done by Shafin. The 3D art design is done by OT Studio. They are, in fact, the design studio that has done our cohort artworks. So these two were not by them, but all the 10K designers artworks, as well as the music design, animation, the 3D, that's all done by them. Here specifically, they did do the new brand, the new C8 brand. And overall, graphics, just some stuff, still a lot more to go. Things like thumbnails and everything. We've got Joy taking care of that. We've got more coming up. But let me take you behind the scenes now, right? This is this November, so just earlier last week. But what goes behind something like this? Now, to start over here, I'm going to be showing you the tools. Let me talk about the tools involved in pulling off a website redesign, something like this. The tools involved. Number one, FigJam. FigJam was a very important tool. Let's come back here. FigJam is a super, super important tool for designers today. As part of this, for this project, it was one of the most important tools we use, FigJam, because if you are remote and if you're collaborating with other people, it does require you to do a lot of brainstorming. Now, brainstorming in real life is like, oh yeah, here's the whiteboard. Let's draw stuff. Let's put sticky notes, all of that stuff. But when you're collaborating with somebody remotely, you're not in the same city, or you're not even in the same country in our case, you do need a substitute for this, right? There is no good substitute for being in that same space. The tricky thing that a lot of beginners have difficulty understanding about design is not just the thing you create, design is also the process that you go through to create something. So as part of that process, there are people involved. There are people who have different goals. There are people who have, sometimes we call these stakeholders, which is you have to manage your stakeholders. This could be client, it could be other teams. In this particular scenario though, the main stakeholder was myself, which is I am designing this as the client. But we were talking about tools. So FigJam, number one. Figma number 2, which is once we actually figured out what to design, the actual design work happens in Figma. So FigJam to Figma, and then what happens after Figma is usually the development. How do you actually develop this, going from just a screen to an actual URL that you can visit, an actual working website? We used Webflow for that. So I was involved as the client, as the design lead, but I was also the Webflow developer, right? I chose to do the entire Webflow redesign by myself. Not easy, but we pulled it off. What we're going to do now is I'm going to take you into our mood board, and I want you all to help guide the session. So let's start here. Let's start here. Folks, if you're not a designer, I think you might be on the wrong stream. So folks who are here who are like, what the fuck is happening? I thought this was a gaming stream. Sorry guys, this is not a gaming stream. This is actually a work related stream. I don't know. I'm seeing new faces in the chat, so just thought I would say that up front. Let's jump here, okay? This is our FigJam, the core FigJam that we were using. Now, I don't know how much to get into, but some of the things that I want to show you, I want to specifically show you things that will be useful to you. What can you learn from this particular project? That's going to be my focus. So I might not show you everything in full detail because explaining everything is going to take a while. I'm going to show you the things that I think are useful to you. But let me know in the chat. I'm going to follow along. Okay. First up, the most useful thing that I think a lot of people don't know yet is you now have AI options within FigJam. So looking at this over here, okay, you can within FigJam actually start brainstorming. So something like this, right? Very simple prompt, making a website, or I am making a website for a design cohort based course. I think Smeeth did this particular flow, but I'm just going through it. You do have a bunch of options. Like FigJam does have this, it's called Jambot. So you can just go in here and add Jambot right here. But you can say ideate, and what it does is it gives you stuff like this. So homepage, a welcome message. It tries its best, right? Let's just say that. It tries its best. And I think this is very useful, but at the same time, I don't know if you can fully rely on this, right? I would definitely suggest you try this out. For those of you who've never tried out Jambot before, it is interesting, but I did not find it super useful. Okay, maybe it is getting better. This is Figma AI. Yeah, this is Jambot. This is not Figma AI though. Figma AI now has an update where you can also generate things like flowcharts. This is just Jambot. This is more for ideating. This is almost like ChatGPT within your FigJam, right? You can think about it like this. It's got a bunch of these operations that you can run, and it basically works with this sticky notes kind of style. Okay. We went through a lot of back and forth, and now I'm not showing you everything in order. I'm showing you in terms of priority, some of the things that were useful to us. GPT, folks, those of you who are, let me actually make this specific. GPT-4. Those of you who've not fully started using GPT-4 in your projects, totally okay, right? Totally okay. There's no FOMO about that. But let me show you some ways we did it to give you some ideas, okay? And maybe you can think about, maybe I can use something here. So instead of, I think most people, when they come to GPT-4, the thing that they do is they say, hey, I am designing a website. Can you give me the copy? Right? Like they're very direct with ChatGPT where they just say what they want, which is fine. But imagine working with a teammate, like maybe a freelancer that you've hired, and you just ask them, hey, do this. That doesn't really work. In design, you have to set context a lot of times. You might know what you want up here, but nobody can read that. And at the same time, how are you going to communicate it, right? It's a big problem. You have to solve that with every single project that you work on. Anyways, purple is mine. So I'm going to just take you through some of this conversation. Yes, the stream will be available on the channel post this session. In fact, okay, I won't reveal too much, but let's check this out. Okay. Now, the way I think about GPT-4 is I try to have conversations. In fact, a big OpenAI update that just happened in the last 24 hours is voice is now available to everyone, which is you can now, even without ChatGPT Plus, use the voice feature to talk. So I don't know if any of you have tried this, but let me show you this real quick. This is all about how can I make it useful for you. Okay, so some of this stuff might make sense, some of it won't. Some of you might have this kind of stand on your desk, like for your phone. I want you to try this sometime this week, okay, or maybe next week, but this week. Try this out next time you're designing something. Open your phone to the ChatGPT app and go into voice mode. All right, so voice mode, it looks like this. I'm sure you've seen this around some places. But what I can basically do is have conversations. And so if I'm sitting in the same way that I might have a conversation, I can just keep my phone here and actually leave it on. I don't have to keep coming back. I can just leave it on. Only when I say something is when it responds. Okay, I'm not going to cancel this now because I don't want to get into it. But that's a quick suggestion. Try using ChatGPT voice as a quick brainstorming teammate. I know chat is how most of us are familiar with it, but you can now have this just listening to your conversations on your desk. So literally as you're thinking, hey, I'm thinking about what the website should be. What do you think about you immediately get a response, right? In some ways, this is the value of having colleagues where you can quickly, with low feedback time, like low response time, actually get a response from them. Try that out for GPT, but we're going to jump back into our little Prezi over here. Presentation. Back then, though, I was trying deeper with this. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give it this kind of context. So I've said I've identified personas. These are the 3 personas. In fact, if you go to our website, you will see these 3 personas right here as well. Right? We've got the school college dropout, the designer that feels stuck and wants to level up, and we've got persona 3, career transitioner. So I tried as much as possible to give context to ChatGPT about these personas, right? How do I know these personas? I'm going to wait if somebody asks this question. I think it's pretty straightforward. But this is ChatGPT's response, right? So certainly understanding what I'm trying to figure out is I'm not really trying to get an immediate answer. I'm trying to help ChatGPT understand the context first. So it took what I did, put it down in a much cleaner way, right? What are the decision-making stages? This is a lot of deep UX brainstorming, I would say. So I am now slowly giving all this information. Here you go. Now, not all of this was useful, right? The reason I put this here was it was interesting. And then what Smith did was he put it here and he removed a couple of points, right? So from the entire conversation, we were able to get a few interesting ideas. Now, the gap with AI is it gives you a lot, which, those of you who've been through the cohort, you might recognize that as divergent. AI can push you like this. It diverges your thoughts, right? It gives you more to think about. But that's not always useful. Sometimes you want less to think about. You want to say, no, I'm not going to do all this, but I'm going to do this. That's the difficult part. So what we did, we extracted some ideas here. Now, this is not the first thing that we started with, but it was one of the first few things, right? The first thing I actually started with was figuring out what the goals of the website were. I'm going to show you that. But this was a lot of that initial brainstorming. Now, to show more direct stuff, we've got stuff like this, right? one of the things we directly asked was, hey, okay, I have a sitemap and I'm ready to start developing the content and design for these web pages. This is what it is. And it does give it all out for you, but you still need to figure out a lot of stuff, right? This, for somebody who's a beginner, I think this is very, very useful. To me, this was not so useful. That's actually an advantage. If you here, you're listening to this and you consider yourself, I'm still learning, I'm still a bit of a beginner, I would say this is very, very useful to you. Super useful. Like, to be able to have this much stuff to think about and this much stuff guiding the direction of your project, very useful. To me, this was not a 10 out of 10 useful. It was maybe a 7 out of 10 useful. Because, like, guys, I'll be very honest, right? I'm the client here. I've been the CEO of this company for 3.5 years. There is, in these 3.5 years, not even talking about the personal struggle, the difficulty of being a solo founder, of just starting a business or running a business, not even talking about all that. In these 3 years, starting your own business, it's one of those things where there's very little you've not thought of. Let me just say that, right? So all this stuff here, what was exciting for me was to see that somebody else also now knows about this stuff. But every single thing, I have thought of it already. It's just to see it all in one place. It's that to me was just a 7 out of 10 experience. Okay. The other interesting thing is your team can do this. So me as the client, I already had a lot of this context. But if I had to actually type this out as a PRD or as a document to share with my designers, it would have taken me a lot of time to do it. But now I can just share the ChatGPT URL and say, hey, check this out. This was my first round of brainstorming. All right. So check it out. Okay. That's what this was. Other than that, what we kind of started with, now the date on this is 22nd of August. September, October, November. Yeah, so about 3 months ago. This was our simplified IA. Okay. This is what we had at the moment. We had the home page, we had the cohort page, we had these kind of alumni directories, we had a few pages that had just kind of been added on. One of the challenges with actually maintaining a website is a snapshot at a particular point in time. The reason redesigns are even needed is because as time progresses and as the company changes, as the market changes, as your product changes, you know what I said in the beginning of this session, right? A website is expected to be the source of truth. Like, I should be able to, in theory, go here and have any of my questions answered. So the reason redesigns are needed in the first place is because usually websites, the day you launch your redesign, your website is already getting out of date, right? Small, but within a year, you're like, oh yeah, it's like 10% out of date, 20% out of date. I'm sure those of you here who worked on client websites, worked on your own, maybe even worked on your portfolio side, you get what I'm talking about, right? So redesigns, regular thing. Any website that exists out there does need redesigns every couple of years. For us, it had been too many years though. Since we started, we have had the same website, but we've been slowly adding stuff to it. And now it's a bit messy. So we then had to kind of go back. And this is our simplified IA. Who we are, what we offer, why us, hire from us, learn from us, be a part of us, right? Simple. Flow. I don't think this is too relevant. But a lot of this work that you're seeing here, like, you might think, why not just jump into the design directly? Why do all of this upfront work? Like, you already know we have all of this. To give you an idea, this does not, Figma and FigJam, these two parts of the design process, don't necessarily just happen, how do I say this? They don't happen in series. It's not like you do this first and then you start designing. You'll kind of do it in parallel. So every meeting that we would have, right? So in a week, we would have maybe 1 or 2 calls for this particular project. And the first thing we would open would be the FigJam. We would check out the FigJam and say, have we updated what's going on in the project? If we had to discuss something, we would discuss based on what is here. One problem, now I'm talking again from how can I make this useful to you? As a designer, when you have a lot of discussions happening, The problem is with information, it gets very easy to be it gets very easy to drown in information, right? So I have all this stuff here, but when there's an entire team and you have to communicate, and this is just a blueprint, right, of the actual work. It gets hard to coordinate. Now imagine if we did not have this fig jam, how difficult it would be to discuss this stuff just over email or just over Slack, right? So this has now become a very crucial part of most design teams, especially the ones that are remote. This kind of wireframing, or not just wireframing, like brainstorming. This is your whiteboard, right? But it's way better than a real whiteboard because you don't need to keep erasing and taking photos and sharing it with everybody. You've got this one source of truth, this one source of process. Anything that happens, like let's say it's my iPad screenshots, they have to be in FigJam because this is the whiteboard for us. Folks, any questions so far? Because I'm going to show you some of this and then I'll jump into our Figma files as well. Okay. I'm going to show you a bit of this stuff. Now, this here, the date here, 28th August, it did take a bunch of time for us to actually reach this page alone. This is the home page, and usually with most redesign projects, at least if you're doing a full redesign, a home page is a very important page. So is the offer page, a page where there is conversion, like apply now or something. But this page, it took us a really long time to put this together. All right. But while I was working on this, right? So as a team, we're all doing this. I was trying to figure out the wireframes. We also had parallel explorations going on for our visuals. So now for a redesign, the most obvious thing is obviously it has to look different, right? A redesign implies that it looks different after the redesign is done. We had to do an audit, right? We had to do a quick audit to figure out, number one, what's our current vibe? Like, how do we exactly define the current vibe? Current vibe. And then how do we, what do we change it to? The goal of the website redesign was to update, right? When we started it, we had done one cohort, but then by the time we had started this website, 6 or 7 cohorts were done already. But anyway, let me show you some of our explorations. One thing that we realized was, as our positioning being the design school of the future, it does feel like now compared to when we started this, we're already living in the future, right? So an updated tagline that we came up with was the design school of the internet. Given that I am here in Copenhagen, Jenil, who's my co-host, Jenil and I do every single live session together for each cohort. Jenil is based in the US. Our mentors are based in India. Our members, most of them in India, but everywhere. A tighter positioning. Right now, I'm talking about a few brand design parts of this. From a positioning perspective, it was design school of the internet. But from a visual, what does that design school of the internet mean? One of our big inspirations was actually the iPad. I've been, of course, been a huge fan of Apple as a designer, of course. But very specifically, what we found was our website, we had this purple, pink, gradient aesthetic going on, right? This is a kind of popular aesthetic back in the day, even now to some extent. But we wanted to create this kind of juxtaposition between this polished site. People asking how much time was taking to finish the website. No, guys. I mean, Hardik is wrong about that. 2 days. It took 2 days to do the Webflow. It took about 3 months to do the full website, like actually designing. The development actually took just 2 days. The design, though, took a very long amount of time. The development part was about 2 12-hour sessions, and I just completed it. But let me show you a little bit of the behind the scenes, okay? The vibe that we wanted to go for was number one, that of a design school. So we took, in our inspiration, this is our mood board, we looked a lot into some of these education keynotes. So iPad, Apple Notes, um, even FigJam, for example, the vibe that they have here. We looked at a bunch of landing pages, Apple landing pages for education. And the reason we really loved this particular vibe was it is a juxtaposition. On one side, you've got this, which is like the space, pink, purple, gradient, heavy 3D, lot of detail, virtual, right? Completely virtual spaces, virtual textures. On the other hand, you have something which is human. You've got organic. You've got it's messy, and that's not a problem. It's a work in progress. This was the vibe we're going for. Okay. So we checked out a few more explorations. One direction that we thought about but eventually decided not to pursue too much was skeuomorphism, which is we were like, we do kind of overall, we wanted to use this particular vibe, like this particular vibe of being messy, authentic. Like we wanted to create that college campus slash fig jam slash remote team design school of the internet, right? That's the brand positioning. So all of this visual design work that you're seeing, right? Brand stuff. The purpose is we're trying to figure out how do we hit that vibe? What fits that? So anyway, this was a really nice campus app that we dug up as part of our research. Very interesting elements from here. Few more things. I don't know how useful it is. We checked out some websites, some interesting patterns. We found these kind of sites, the very notebook kind of vibe. Now this represents one extreme of it. We did, however, take some inspiration from some elements here, made our own version of it. Here we've got a lot of Figma elements. These are Figma stickies. These are some sketch notes. So we did take inspiration from sketch notes and collages. But overall, the value here for you, if you are somebody who's working on a website, visual design usually involves something like this, right? My suggestion to all of you here, from a very practical perspective, is whenever you're doing a website, it's useful to create these kind of mood boards of what do you roughly want it to be like. Also, what we also did was we did some ideas here. So for each of these, we also were like, hey, these are some interesting things that might look good. Now, we didn't end up going with or copying or, being too close to any of these, but this was inspiration, right? This is inspiration for visual design. Okay. Website Webflow mein bani hai? Yes. Website is made in Webflow. So FigJam, Figma, Webflow were the three primary tools used for this. All right, guys, you want to jump into some wireframes? Okay, let me check out some chats. All right, cool. So, folks, let's continue. I want to show you a little bit more process, but then we can, in the next 5-10 minutes, let's move to questions so that I can show you more stuff. Priyansh, what can I exactly expect post this session as a learning designer? Process. The most crazy thing that the most useful thing according to me in this is process. Most of the times when we think about design, we see the final output. Which is you see the website, you see it on Twitter, you see people put stuff in their portfolio. What you typically don't get to see is the process that went behind it, especially when it's multiple people working together in a team. If you're working at a company and you have a design team, you probably have your own version of what I'm showing you right now. Your Figma files probably look 50 to 80% similar to this. But let's go deeper, right? Let's talk about some more process specific things. And as much as possible, I'll try to point out certain things that I think will be useful for you, as I've been doing in this session. Okay. So when the so this project for about a month or 2 months actually started slowing down, right? We started very broad to kind of figure all this out. We even put together, after we started doing all of this, we started putting together some these kind of information architecture maps. This is made using Whimsical. But at the same time, we were kind of losing momentum, right? So when things actually started turning around is when we finally jumped into wireframes, when we said, okay, we need to now move forward. So let me zoom in. Okay. Now, the reason I'm even showing you this is a lot of people do not put enough emphasis on wireframes. And to be very honest, it's totally okay, right? Do not take anything that I'm telling you here as some kind of rule that you need to do it. Take it as a guidance that, hey, that's also possible. Personally, what I like to do is I like as much as possible to know what I'm designing before I start designing. Now let me make that very clear. It's an important point. I do not open Figma till I know what I'm going to be doing in Figma, right? Now it's not a rule that you have to do this, right? I'm not going to give you this as a suggestion, but in my experience, I have just found it's useful to know what you're doing before you jump into Figma, right? Looking at a blank screen in Figma and figuring it out. Yeah, I've done plenty of that, right? And sometimes that works. But for me, I like figuring stuff out before getting into visuals. So this is what I've done here. This to me, I like as soon as we had this ready, in my mind, the website was done, right? Because it's a level of clarity. As you move through the process, you gain more clarity. And to me, this was okay. We've crossed the 50% mark, right? By the time we had done this. But anyway, I don't know how useful this is, so I don't know how much to talk about. But this is the wireframe of the homepage. The core things we had to figure out were, core things when you're doing wireframes, copy, right? I see a lot of people just do this, like what I've done here for copy. But to me, wireframes, I try to figure out what the copy should be. And if not exact, roughly what should it be? So let me show you an example. I knew that the headline for my website is going to be Design School of the Internet. Some of you might be surprised. You can go designing and you can finish the design and not know what the headline of your page is, right? Personally, to me, that's the wrong way of doing it, right? Again, this is very subjective. Personally, to me, the design process is a process of increasing your clarity and being sure about more things. So personally for me, I try as much as possible to finalize my copy as part of the wireframes itself. Some places where I can't. So for example, here, I wasn't exactly sure what the copy should be. What we finally ended up going with was this, not a design bootcamp, but something better. Making a graphic for this, adding this kind of Mac doc element here without the interactions as of now. Back then I didn't know. However, I did know what it should be roughly about, right? So it's about some kind of student results. It's about what we are. I wanted to include some social proof here, which is from the personas that we have. I also wanted to include some logos here, right? So I also put a reference here, Sagar's website. He's got a scrolling logos thing. I was like, that's exactly what we need. And yeah, overall, this is annotating, right? So when I'm on a call, instead of letting people do the heavy work of figuring out what do my wireframes mean, usually I take them through a call and I explain it with these kind of annotations, right? So this was our website's homepage wireframe. Madhur's question was this the first thing you did? I'm assuming this means, was this the first wireframe you worked on? This was not exactly. I actually don't remember. Definitely not the first. We had a lot of smaller wireframes. Like let's just say they were not good. They were like halfway there. Like I would have one idea, do it, and then I'm like, but this doesn't go with that, or I'm not sure about this, but what about that? So overall, if you look at my process, the way I do things, now I'm not saying you need to do it this way, but if you find yourself stuck, you can take some inspiration from here. The way I like to do things is I like to progressively build upon, right? So wireframes here, this was maybe one of my first couple of wireframes for this project that was good. The wireframes before this, I hadn't figured out a lot of this core stuff. So how can you do a wireframe when you don't know the information? That's the core thing. Your wireframes will be as good as the information you put in the wireframes, which means you actually have to figure out the information first, which is why we had all this time, going through this and everything, which is to us, like normally you would use research as this information gathering thing. For us, research is not a specific thing we do, it's a continuous process, right? So a lot of this was us actually aggregating the research from past cohorts, past surveys, anyways, let's jump back here. Question from Quick Takes. Let's look at this here. As a beginner, talking to someone, ask us, why did you choose this color? Why did you place this logo here? Why not there? How to gain confidence over this? The way to gain confidence is to actually have a reason. That's actually the simple way. So to give you all an idea, I'll jump back here. Let's say I was not the client and a question asked to me was, hey, you're using this particular style of highlighting and text, all this, right? Like this kind of style. You're using this purple and pink, but why are you doing it? That's the question I'm guessing, right? In the one that I just saw from Quick Takes. You need to have a reasoning behind it. The reasoning that I just gave you all, we started as the design school of the future. So the vibe we went for was a very futuristic vibe. And then so vibe is a very abstract thing, right? Like how do you, like what decides the vibe of something? It's the looks, right? So the colors you use, typography, your spacing, it's the core design stuff, right? So things like imagery, if you use photos, what kind of photos, what's the vibe of the photos? If you use 3D, what's the vibe of the 3D stuff? So brand design, think from that perspective when you're thinking about visuals. Usually there are no deep reasons and every reason can be contested. So somebody might see this and be like, no, but I don't get the future vibe from this. And honestly, if they say that, I'm not going to get angry. I'm going to be like, tell me more. How do you, when you say design for the future, what do you imagine is what I would ask them. And then this kind of process that you're seeing here, typically it's called mood boarding. Mood boarding is a process that you should ideally try to involve your client in, right? So ask them that question. What do you want it to be like? They should be able to send you examples. You should be able to aggregate these examples. And based on these examples, you should be able to say, the reason I'm moving forward with this decision, and I think it's the best decision right now, is because of this. And this is our discussion so far. Here's proof though. Here's proof that we've talked about this. That's a little bit about how do you manage clients. But overall, if your question is specific to how do you design, how do you figure out and make decisions like colors, spacing, visuals, lots of them, you do it manually. There's no one thing that can help you. You literally have to, for every single thing, do it. So let me show you an example here, right? Let me go to our actual design. This, we were not starting from scratch. So the kind of easy answer for us is we were just using the existing brand guidelines, right? So if this was from scratch, we would have to do a lot of back and forth with whoever the client is. There's no client here, guys. It's just me. But in this case, we're going to jump into some visuals now. This was our rough style. So what we did a quick audit where we put together, check this out, guys. We put together every UI element on the page in one single Figma, right? So every single UI element that we've used anywhere on the website, some of these pages that you'll see here are still work in progress. We've still not launched some of these pages. But one of the processes we did was we put everything together and we said that from a UI perspective, the redesign cannot stray too much from the current one. So that was a decision that we made. How did we make that decision? After considering all the options. How do you make any decision? It's by considering all the options, right? So I'll try to show you some more examples of that. It's a good question. But check this out. So we put together all of our elements. These are all our different UI elements here. A very core thing we wanted to show was presence. A big part of the any campus experience or campus-like experience is the people, right? So we're using different ways of doing that, right? We're trying these kinds of elements, so it kind of feels like Figma. We tried these kind of elements, which is more Figma cursors, slightly modified, used with different types of cursors. But anyway, all of this was exploration, right? In the end, when it came down to it, this wireframe is what helped us kind of move forward. Let me see if there's anything else here before we move to the visuals. This same wireframe, but just in light mode. One of the reasons I like doing this is I also like to try to think about what are the core CTAs on my website, like core call to actions. A website, unlike a magazine, the only interaction you do with it is read. Websites are not like magazines. Websites are supposed to be interactable. They're supposed to be navigable. You're supposed to navigate and read more about it. What was I saying? Making some point here. One second. Let me come back here. Okay, yeah. Websites are supposed to be navigable, right? So websites, you want to think of them as it's a collection of these pages. There are navigation flows between these pages, but you want to be intentional about where do I send people? Where do I want people to go visit? And, in a very simple way, that's just navigation. So think about navigation when you're designing. But in this, roughly we tried to figure out, and we said that these are the 4 core verticals of our company. So cohort, content, community, companies. At its core, 10K designers, 4 verticals. Cohort, content, community, and companies. So we decided to align our information architecture, which is how do we arrange information. We decided to align that with the organizational architecture, which is as an organization, how do we think about what we do, right? So we have these verticals. These are the core things that we do as 10K designers. So these sections here, it became very simple once we actually had this unlock, which is, oh yeah, the 4 C's. The 4 C's would be perfect even for our navigation. And so then we added a bunch of this upfront testimonials, right? So social proof, really important to build trust in how many ever different ways you can do it. But outside of that, this is kind of what we ended up with, where we said, let's have one section dedicated to talking about that particular vertical. So there are just 4 sections here: cohorts, content, community, companies. For each, we thought about what's the call to action. For cohorts, it was learn more. It takes you to the cohort page. Content, start learning. Community, browse, learn more. For companies, hire from us, download placement report. These are some things that are still in progress. Finally, you have your sitemap. You've got your channels. We wanted to include a lot of fun elements as well. We've done a little bit of that. But overall, this was something we had to keep reminding ourselves, which is how do we not let this get boring? And I think we've done a decent job. But overall, we kept thinking about how do we make it fun? How do we make it fun? Either through the content itself or the way we do it or, the exact visuals. All right, let's come back here. So guys, that was our wireframe. From this was our first version that we created. Now you might be thinking, how did all this come together? This is how it came together. We already had all our UI elements. We wanted to figure out the next version of these. So staying similar, but making a few stylistic upgrades, right? That was our simple way to decide. Overall, I see a question from Dave. What's the context behind 10K in 10K designers? Dave, great question. And one that I should be answering every single session because a lot of people don't know. Dave, one thing that I realized 10 years being a designer in India, we're still early, bro. And from my perspective, the goal of 10K designers is to create a network of 10,000 exceptional designers and have a network that serves them. So, a network that helps you find projects, that helps you learn, that helps you meet people, that helps you get connected with the best companies, that is fighting for you. The network provides. That's what we're trying to build. Design School of the Future, we are imagining this future state where there are 10,000 exceptional designers working at the best companies in India. That's our fourth C, companies. And it's not an easy place to reach, but we're pretty sure we're going to do it. Let me say maybe within this decade if things go great. But that's the goal. I hope that's an interesting story there. All right. So these are some of our visual explorations, trying to figure out the specific details, right? So how exactly do we show the internet's design school? Now, talking about the mood board, we did discuss this concept where it's a juxtaposition of this raw and this polished vibe. So that's what we try to do right from the header itself. So create that tech kind of vibe, but also create this raw design type of vibe. All right, guys. So zoom out. These were some of our explorations. Some of this stuff, it's still not even live on the site. Some of this will probably come in future updates. So we're thinking, so from the wireframes, if you remember, we've got a section for cohort, a section for community. We want to have a homepage for each of these. So /cohort, /community, /content, /companies. We've not done that yet, but this is our community section where we want to create more of this kind of custom artwork, illustrated, companies, content. Anyways, folks, I'm kind of coming towards the end. Unless you guys have specific questions, I'll show you maybe one or two more things, and then we can talk. All right, let's come here. This is when shit got real. This is when we realized that the cohort is launching in the next 2 weeks and the website is still not ready. That was a problem that we ran into. We took too long. And I'll be honest, guys, I have no reason to hide. In general, we did all this, but we lost track. We did so much good work, so much exploration, but nothing was moving to Webflow, which means handoff was not happening, right? So we found ourselves in a slightly uncomfortable position where we had a lot of stuff. We had all these iterations, but we're like, decisions to be made, right? Like just, oh, should we do this or this? Like, most of these decisions were because if you want to do everything that you've designed in general, if you've designed something and you want to develop 100% of it, it requires a lot of effort, right? So usually when you come towards this handoff stage, you have to start making difficult decisions, right? You might have gone divergent and explored a ton of stuff, but at some point you got to pull yourself back and you got to go convergent, where you need to say, this is it. We are getting this out. We've made the final decision, right? That's a very difficult process. And for us, I think we had 2 weeks or 1.5 weeks left. The cohort announcement was supposed to happen, and the website, Webflow, had not even started, right? So we found ourselves in this uncomfortable position. And that's when I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do the Webflow myself. And so over the course of 2 days, not 2 continuous days, I think I took a gap of 2-3 days in between. But over the course of 2 days, I started now converging, right? This was I'm the client, I'm the design lead, but I'm also the fucking developer here, which is a very weird combo. But I started making this in Webflow. And for that, one by one, I started putting together the sections and making final decisions. So final decisions were things like, okay, like just to give you a small example, okay, for our heading, right? We've done a couple of iterations. We need to pick one of these. Which one is it going to be? Final. Let's do this. Navigation. We've tried this. We've tried this. We are going for that FigJam vibe. So we had, these dots in the background. I don't know if you guys can see this, but we also had this scale here, this very subtle looking scale. But decisions had to be made, right? We have a week left before the announcement, and this needs to be developed. So we're like, okay, fuck it. Like we have to take some decisions that are easy to do, right? Some things here we would have loved to actually do it, but we just did not have the time. So we started putting this together section by section, finalizing things. This illustration, I just did this on my iPad, quickly put this together, transferred it to FigJam, created all of that, put it here. This was to me one of the hardest parts because it involved so much copywriting. Now you might think copywriting, hey, didn't we do all that ChatGPT stuff over there? Here's the thing, guys. When you're creating a website and you want to think about the copy on your website, you can't just say whatever the fuck you want. You have to be on a message. You have to be on a mission. You have to be on goal. The goal with this is to introduce this thing that's been running for 3.5 years called 10kdesigners, that now has 1,000 alumni members and has its new cohort coming up. We have to be the source of truth for that. So this was the hardest part, according to me. Of course, the Webflow, but it was not just the Webflow that I was doing. I was actually section by section finalizing stuff. So the final convergence of what do you pick from all your variations. This was the hard part. So section by section. These sections, I decided for version 1, we're going to skip this. We're going to skip these sections. We'll launch it in a future release. But guys, you can see this was my working file. So I would go section by section, create the assets, create variations, create it, upload it on Webflow, and then say, okay, this is the final. Create these assets, create the mobile responsive version of these assets, start putting these together. Since we were going heavy with the FigJam vibe, something we did is use this FigJam sticky note thing extensively. So for this, we were able to go into our Slam book. C7 folks here, you know what I'm talking about here. We were able to go into our FigJam Slam book from the cohort, pull out a few, arrange them, make the final visual, export that as an asset, add it to Webflow. A lot of just manual work, things like getting these logos together. I think one thing that a lot of people miss out on, or rather don't realize this immediately, is a lot of your design, your visual design, like how it looks in the end, is actually dependent on a lot of these small things adding up. So things like logos, things like, what are the final assets you use, the illustrations you use, of course, the copy as well. So this was a little bit of that. Again, the tricky part here is it's never just one thing, is it? Right? The question that I think somebody asked earlier is, how do you make decisions? You make decisions by looking at your options available and saying, what's the best? How do I find out what's the best? You try it out. So to give you one example of this, I needed one graphic that at a glance tells you what 10K designers is, right? From a design perspective, it's like, oh fuck, one graphic that explains all of what 10K designers is a big challenge. But guys, I'm the goddamn CEO here, been doing this for 3.5 years. So I was like, okay, I can probably do that one thing that, is in my notes. So I put it together, and just to show you real quick the process, this was the graphic that I put together. So I created this. Okay, it's going to be slightly funny. I created this, and I'm like, yeah, this is perfect. 16 weeks. It's a rite of passage. It's a rite of passage into the 10K designers community. But the 10K designers community is a part of the design, tech, and startup industry. There's holes here, there's intermixing. And so, of course, you can directly become a designer, but this is like an optimized path that we've created through eight iterations, close to 10 actually now, but 7 iterations of just the core UI UX program. But as soon as I did this, I realized a problem with it. And it's a very weird problem. I'm sure most of you are not thinking about this. I put this on the website and I was like, this is difficult to read. The main reason, there's the small text, but the bigger reason was we read left to right. And so for this bridge to be on the right side, I was like, no, the first thing you see in this image should be this bridge. So technically this should be the other way around. And I was like, oh fuck, like I should have thought of that earlier. So then did some iterations. So I actually redrew the whole thing, but this time with the bridge on the left side, just to make it left to right. You read it and it's like, oh, that's the progression. Did this. I was like, this is kind of perfect. But then I was still kind of stuck on it. So tried another variation, which is the long version. But then as I was doing this, I got more ideas. I was like, hey, maybe I should... there's actually a bigger ecosystem at play here, which is there's the tech, design, and startup industry. But let's say Jenil, me, a lot of our mentors, a lot of our members, they're from all of these countries. So I was like, hey, maybe we should show the global thing. So then I drew this diagram. And that's when I realized, guys, the first thing itself was good. Like, I saw this and I was like, why the fuck am I complicating it so much? I'm trying to be like, very descriptive or something, trying to pack all this information and knowledge. But I was like, this is just too much. And so that's when I was like, okay, let's go back. The final variation we should be checking out, or the one we should be using, let's just use this left to right one. So that's what I did. So it's decisions like that, right? And there's tons of these. There's like hundreds of these kinds of small decisions that you make. But each decision adds up. One single decision made wrong will not fuck up your entire design, right? So one thing I want to just tell you all is don't be afraid in making these decisions. Go with your gut, go with your intuition, go with your conversations, right? Talk to people, get their perspective. But in the end, pull the trigger. There's too many decisions like this. And it's not easy. You have to just go through it. How do you make decisions? Put your options out there, compare. Then we did a lot of these graphics. Just putting together some slides. I don't think we used this anywhere, but just putting together all of our cohorts along with our dates. First cohort was in June, cohort 2, cohort 3, cohort 4, cohort 5, 6, 7, and now the 8th one coming up. These were just some graphics for the site. A core thing that I also mentioned is I wanted to show people, like show presence in different ways. So the way we were able to do that is we did use these cursors in a lot of interesting ways. We have these sticky notes. Sticky notes in FigJam, when they're created, it includes the author's name. So that was a really nice way of, actually showcasing some of our members. Outside of that, one idea that we did not fully do is we actually wanted to go heavier with this concept, which is we wanted to show presence in this kind of nostalgic kind of way. We didn't really do it though. We did it slightly, which is in some of the thumbnails on the website, we show it like this. Like we show these different backgrounds. These are basically our assignments. So this time around, we have a very interesting new gamification model for our assignments that we think is going to make your assignment way more fun, less intimidating, equally challenging. It does become less challenging, but more of a simulator, right? More like a game. Now that's just something that's an update we're making this cohort. But yeah. So guys, overall, that is my redesign right here. I want to come to chat now. We'll talk a little bit. And yeah, then we wrap up. Very interestingly, so actually, let me show you this now. Finally, you're seeing all this. This is what it comes together to. I'm going to play this one more time. Let's check it out. Yeah, guys. The reason I showed you that, right, is the final point that I want to end on is a lot of us are designing good stuff. Fewer of us, though, are taking the effort to showcase, and even fewer people are taking the effort of fully showcasing and marketing your work. Guys, in 2023 and going into 2024, the designer has a dual function of being a designer but also a marketer, because of course there is the marketing skill needed for things like copywriting, figuring out these landing pages, figuring out how do you be user centered, how do you think about your personas, how do you think about what they are looking for, how do you use terms that they want. There's all that stuff. But as a designer today, it's very important to post your stuff. It's very important to figure out how do you create good presentations of your stuff, because you might have this entire Figma file, but it took me right now about 2 hours to take you all through this Figma file. Just think about that for a sec. All of you here, think to your one of your top projects, right? Just think about that for a sec. It's in your mind right now. Your top project that you worked on. It's probably a massive Figma file like this that you're very proud of. But actually having somebody else go through it is a very long and tedious process. So constantly as a designer, you need to be thinking about how do I get my work out from Figma and FigJam onto the internet. That of course comes in the form of shipping, which is a design is not done till a person on the other end is actually using it. So that's one part of it. But the other part of it is if you've done your design, it needs to be out there on the internet for people to find, for people to discover, right? So my suggestion overall, one of my final kind of my suggestions to all of you, let's just keep it simple. Promote your work. How much ever you think you're promoting your work right now, you could be promoting it a little bit more. Let me just say that. And this kind of shit is what gets you clients. It's what gets you discovered. It's what helps you break from the matrix that you found yourself trapped in. So, questions, guys. Let's talk about a few of these. Giveaway. So, folks, we're going to do a t-shirt giveaway, okay? Hardik, thank you for the reminder. I am thinking though, I want to do like a quiz or something, and I don't have a question to ask. I want to do an interesting quiz question. First person to get it gets it, gets a t-shirt. Okay, I'm going to see the comments and I'm going to come up with one. Meanwhile, Source Killer says many designers look up to you for inspiration, but who inspires you? I am. Let me give you a general answer, then let me give you a specific answer, because this is a very important question you asked, and I don't want to give a SE random Steve Jobs or something. To me, I am inspired by people who make shit happen in multiple creative mediums. But let's go specific. I love Brian Chesky, right? Brian Chesky, the level of design he's able to bring into running organizations, insane, right? So I love Brian Chesky. I love people who talk about new ideas, right? Ideas that the rest of the world will be like, oh man, that's so weird, or um, uh, new ideas. So frontier ideas is what I like to call it, right? So let's say if I had to show a visual example of that. So here, guys, let's say just imagine for a second. This is the small 10K designers community, right? It's small. And then there's a huge, of course, this is not drawn to scale, obviously not. But this design tech startup industry, just imagine it, okay? Imagine there is a space that encompasses all of tech design and startups worldwide, but India specific, we can think about that as well. There are people who are in the middle, and there are people who are at the edges. I hope you understand that concept, this concept right here. When you look at a field like AI, it's very obvious to you as a consumer that most people don't fully know because this technology is still developing. But some people are on the edge of the industry, right? Those people see things coming before everybody else does. Because if you're imagining the space in your mind right now, you can imagine that somebody who's on this edge of a growing industry sees what's outside, sees how these are going to grow. So, personally, for me, I love people who are on the edge, people who are able to some extent, time travel and predict the future purely on the basis of their ideas, right? In the end, what also helps grow this industry is new ideas, new launches, new products, new tech. But anyway, long answer. Who inspires me? Designers. Designers inspire me the most. I don't think there's any other group in this world as inspiring, or I don't think there's a cooler job in the world than designer. And I don't specifically mean designing websites, but somebody who understands design as a process, somebody who understands that things in the world can be changed through a certain design process. No problem is unsolvable. Every problem has a solution, but some solutions take too long to figure out. And if you don't have that time, you need to get creative. So I love designers. I'm inspired by designers. And I don't just mean designers at the top, right? Folks like Brian Chesky, who are running organizations with the power of design, or people like Steve Jobs, who have this legacy of products where, to this point, I've got like 3 or 4 Apple products just on my desk, right? So, not talking about just that, but to me, I am very inspired on an everyday basis when I open Twitter and I see designers posting their work. That inspires me a lot. Because really, guys, if you think about it, okay, I'm not going to convince you. Okay, that's what inspires me. I'm really inspired by designers, by creative people who put stuff out and actually help change things in the world. That's who I'm inspired by. But outside of just people, my bigger inspiration is actually not just that. What I'm inspired by, guys, I didn't realize, but I'm getting a little existential right now. I'm 30 right now. At the time when I was around 25, I had a nagging fear. It still kind of exists, by the way. It's not fear anymore, it's slight paranoia. But I had this paranoia that all this cool stuff is happening around me. And if I don't do anything with myself, I'm going to regret it in the future. Right. So I don't know if you can call that inspiration because it is kind of a negative thing, right? I'm doing it from a position of fear or paranoia. But I think a good amount of that is needed. And even today, I started this session by saying I'm having like a very low productivity time of my life at the moment, right? Especially to do with this. I can't keep using this as an excuse. But yeah, the sun is about to set in 3 minutes. It's 4 o'clock here and the sun is about to set, right? Anyways, I'm inspired by doing something, guys. Like, even till this date, I have a paranoia that I'm going to look back at this time of myself and be like, whoa, what the fuck? You didn't do it. You didn't do it. It was happening around you and you didn't do it. That's the paranoia. Okay. That's the negative thing that pushes me. It's slightly negative, but it pushes me though. The other thing, not so much today, was financial. When I started out in college, my GPA was really bad. I was afraid of not getting placements and I had to figure something else out. And I did not have a fallback option, so I needed to do it, right? So that was motivation. But inspiration to me today, um, I am really inspired by how far can we push this as designers. That's my open question that always is on top of mind. When I say always on top of mind, I mean it's not like I'm thinking about this 24 hours in a day, but often, which is how far can we push this design thing, guys? When I look at people like Brian Chesky and, of course, Airbnb. Now, I don't mean to say that I want to become Brian Chesky, but when I look at the way he's been able to use design in such an interesting way for an organization, and I'm not even saying Airbnb is like super special or something. It's okay. I like it. It's not that bad. I would still probably book a hotel though. I love that it exists. And to me, with design, the fact that design is such a invisible thing that can manifest in so many different ways, I'm really interested in how far can we push this. And when we talk about things like edges, right? Like I was just showing you guys this. When we visualize the edge of any industry, that is what I'm inspired by. Because overnight, guys, overnight, a new chat GPT update or a new tool or something could 10x the amount of money you make. It could 10x the quality of thoughts you're having. It could 10x your creative output. Yet, most new technologies are at the edge, take a long time to reach the center. Right? Normies get technology and all this stuff way later than people who are on the edge. So what excites me is with these new paradigm shifts of AI and spatial, right? If I had to put it down, guys, the world is about to fucking change. Okay, that's all I can say now. I don't know how exactly, but the fact that I get to be a designer while these two things are happening in the world and about to happen to an even crazier extent, like that is inspiration for me. Vishnu says, just curious, what do you do in Copenhagen? Vishnu, it's I do nothing, man. It's fucking cold outside. Just kidding. I don't have a full time job here. Um, I actually just work on 10k designers. I am a full time founder, full time solo founder with a team of 8 people. So we're a 100% remote team, and all I do is work. All I do is work. Maybe a bit too real, but yeah, that's kind of what it is. This is episode 1. What can you expect in our upcoming sessions? Let's talk about that in a bit. Maybe after that, we wrap up. Mm, Oops, zoomed in. Accident. In the upcoming sessions, check this out, folks. This is our link to sign up. I'm going to post it here in the chat as well. We have a bunch of sessions coming up. Today was Wednesday, so this is our kickoff session. And we'll do some more Q&A after this, folks. So in the chat, please drop your Q&A. I want to answer some of these. We're going to do a Friday session. So today, of course, is the kickoff. So I did Wednesday. But we have 3 more sessions planned as of now. We might add some more later. But if you want to join these, hit register. Next session onwards is going to be very different. It's going to be a more of a like reviewing multiple design. Today we went through just one, which is the website redesign. Next session onwards, we're going to have about 3 to 4 designers per session. We're talking about their case studies. We're going to ask them questions. It's going to be slightly like a mock interview type of thing. It's not exactly design feedback, but it's going to be kind of like an interview. It's like a demo day. It's a design presentation. So if you're interested in seeing what designers today, the kinds of projects they are working on, people who are beginners, people who are already designers but pushing these edges. If you want to see what that looks like, would definitely recommend checking this out. Okay. Finally, it's time for a t-shirt giveaway. So for this giveaway, I'm going to come up with a quiz question on the spot, and the answers, whoever gets this right, is going to win a t-shirt. We're going to do this every single episode, by the way. Today, I'm a little unprepared because we didn't prepare our quiz questions, right? But we're going to do this in a very interesting way next episode onwards. Today, though, my question for all of you. I also need to make it something that is not very easily Googleable or chat GPTable. Mm. Hardik, bro, you should have given me a question in advance. Mm. Okay, I have a question, okay? It's brand design related. And it's not exactly tech or something, but it's brand design related. Here's the question. My question to you guys is, which design agency did the branding for Bira beer? Let's go. Who's going to get this first? Bira 91, you guys know what I'm talking about. Which design agency actually did their brand? I'm Googling it myself, but who's going to get this? Who's going to be the first one to get this? Let's go. Guys, Bira. Bira, the beer. You guys have seen that. It's this monkey logo. Which design agency was responsible for Bira's design? All right, the winner. You guys got it. Who got it first though? Hard one. Yash got it. NH1 design. I'm going to give you one more chance, okay, folks that didn't get it. Yash, you got this one. The answer is NH1. Let's see. Let's spotlight this here. Yash, you're getting a t-shirt from us. This is the correct answer, NH1 design. But my another question to you. NH1 design, this agency, what was their original name? What were they called back then? This is a harder one to Google, but I'm sure it's out there. What was NH1 previously called? Because I was surprised when I saw NH1 because I was like, NH1? Who's NH1? These guys probably rebranded. What were they initially called when back then? Oh, it's going to be difficult to find. Okay, guys, I don't think anybody got this, so I'm going to leave this one open. Okay, I think I'm going to do my research as well. Next session onwards, which is this Friday, we're going to have an official quiz. We're going to have an official quiz break between these different case studies. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to give away a lot more t-shirts. For today, this is the small one. But yeah. All right, guys. It was really nice to see you all here. Hopefully, I hope to see a lot of you on Friday's session. And then subsequently, next Friday onwards, we're going to keep these up, a couple of episodes going into December. This is, of course, a brand new channel. So do hit that like button. Do hit the subscribe button. Please, we need this. But see you all soon. Thanks for coming here. And if somebody got it right, I'm going to check. The team is going to check. If any of you got it right, we will also get you the t-shirt and we'll figure it out. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Folks, we're doing a Q&A. I forgot. Check it out. Discord link. I'm just about to share that. That's our open Discord community. If you're interested in talking to the team, talking to other designers, check that out. We're probably going to be around for a bit. Peace.